Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Today on the show we have the prolific YouTuber and finance guru, the Guerrilla Economist. How you doing, sir?
Nico, it's great to be on. I'm excited. I'm pumped. It is 1 p.m. here on the East Coast, and I'm looking forward to running down the gambit of all sorts of awesome topics you got lined up for us, brother.
Thanks, mate. I've been following you for a few years. I appreciate your very entertaining YouTube channel and the advice you put out there. Just for people that are coming to this podcast that are maybe not the finance expert that you are and also spend a lot of time in finance like myself, maybe you can just give us a little bit of a summary of what you've been up to get into finance and just what you think's happening.
Well, I first cut my teeth in banking. I was a commercial banker for RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, RBS North Americas, where I was handling on the business side of things, commercial planning, commercial lending, and as well as business outlays. I did that, but prior to even getting into RBS North America, is what I did before that. I was a commodities trader. Trading and actually more like brokering. I brokered commodities, specifically cobalt, molybdenum, rhenium, hafnium, infinium, gallium. These are some of the rare earth and strategic metals that I would broker. We did it right out of Africa and into Europe, and we sold it throughout the world. The gentleman that mentored me in that was a prominent member who was like Mark Rich's right-hand man over at Glencore. I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to drop any names there, but he was like my mentor, taught me the ropes on that. And then from there, I moved into banking and then got out of banking and went directly working with the LBMA, the London Bullion Market Association, as well as the SBMA, the Singapore Bullion Market Association. One of their major members is a client that I work with, and we started brokering and the logistics and procurement of precious metals, specifically gold and silver, globally for high net worth individuals, institutions, and sovereigns. And that started to snowball as a book of business. And then eventually it began where around 2012, clients started emailing me about Bitcoin and want to know about cryptos. And so I started dabbling in that. And next, I'm on the institutional side of the cryptocurrency thing. So I get to learn a lot. I mean, that those positions between gold and silver and then cryptos on an institutional side really allows me to see the battlefield, so to speak, from a geostrategic, geoeconomic, position. I mean, case in point, when I'm out there saying, "Hey, look, man, there's a lot of sovereigns buying up gold at this price," you better believe it, because gold, when you look at it, like no central bank could even sell an ounce of gold without written express permission from the IMF. Okay, so when you got central banks buying, you got sovereign wealth funds, and you got high net worth individuals and institutions that are buying gold. And I'm seeing the purchases, and I'm involved in some of the deals. I mean, I had a partner of mine, I think it was a couple of years ago, we did 110 metric tons of silver in 1 month. Yours truly, I was dabbling in platinum. Platinum is another very valuable metal. I myself single-handedly moved a sixth of the world's platinum supply by myself. So I got a little bit of an idea of what the hell's going on. And these are all geostrategic, economic metals, and the reason being that these are metals of very high strategic value to nations and very powerful individuals. So when you see who's buying what and where it's moving, you're kind of seeing the building of the chessboard. And then so when I'm out there saying, "Hey, you know what? This is what's happening in the world," and you can look for actions. And people today talk about the multipolar world. Well, the multipolar world's been draining the West of precious metals for several decades. And now we're seeing two financial systems erupting on this world. The old system, which is in the West, the unipolar world, which is dying, and the new multipolar world, which is emerging, that is based on trade, based on manufacturing, based on physical production. So being able to witness that, and then on the crypto side as well, seeing I laugh at most of these guys that talk about cryptocurrencies. I mean, you got guys out there saying, Bitcoin is like the pathway for freedom, and no, it's not. And I laugh at that, because when you realize that the majority of the Bitcoin wallets are controlled by institutions, controlled by high net worth individuals. I think the last count is 96% of the BTC supply is controlled by less than 3% of the wallets. When you realize that BTC price manipulation is done through wash trading on exchanges that are owned by some of these largest institutions, and wash trading simply is you have an institution or a seller who has 10 wallets on one side. He has 20 wallets on the other side, and he simply moves his Bitcoin from one side of wallets he controls to another side of wallets he controls, and therefore having slippage, which affects the price of the coin, and then you have manipulation. So I'm being able to witness that, see that, working with people who supply, like one of my clients that I work with is one of the largest liquidity providers in the world for Bitcoin. They, supply Huobi, they supply Coinbase, Kraken, Gemini. They supply a lot of the cryptocurrencies, the exchanges, as well as the the sovereign wealth funds, as well as some private funds like Grayscale. Grayscale is a buyer. They buy from a client of mine, actually, a partner of mine. They're a major player, and Grayscale is owned partly by DCG Group, and DCG Group controls and owns most of the crypto business in the United States and much of the Western world. So it's becoming very centralized, man. So I'm seeing all of this, and again, the people that I work with on the crypto side, an institution that works with 175 other institutions, and they operate in 45 different countries. So this allows me. You take all of that on the business side, the banking side, the precious metal side, the logistics side, the procurement side, the crypto side, the institutional side. You put it all together, and then you have my background working with some some movers and shakers, the geopolitical, geostrategic sense, and you get somebody who has a really good head on their shoulders in terms of understanding where the global play market, where the global chessboard is, so to speak. I'm not saying I'm the best in the world or toot my own horn, but it's like I'm like, yeah, you know what? I got a pretty good grasp on what the hell's going on these types of topics. That's a little bit about me in a nutshell.
So you can spend pretty much years, all your life, trying to study about finance and still not understand all the different aspects that you need to know to understand what's going on. So how does the average Joe even begin to start thinking beyond just putting money in a savings account and a mortgage, and that's how I exist as a financial user?
I think the best thing that anybody could do is start cutting your teeth on learning how the global economy works. Start cutting your teeth on figuring out what are the emerging economies, emerging markets throughout the world, and what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're getting involved in, what it is that they're buying. And that's going to be the trend. A lot of people are looking to the West as trendsetters. I mean, we were the trendsetters for the last several decades. We're not any longer. I think it was somebody that coined the term that the West is a legacy brand. And it is true. That we in the Western nations, we produce nothing, we make nothing. I live in the United States. Our biggest exports are trash, recyclables, and pornography. Okay, that's our biggest exports. Okay. And if you really want to get to the nitty gritty, it's the fake fictitious dollar that's overvalued and hyperinflated. Right. So those are our biggest exports. So people want to, get to understanding how the next, economic model is going to look like. Start looking at, countries like China, Russia. What are they talking about? What are some of the denizens that live there? What are they talking about? What are some of the markets that are hot there? What are the scientific advancements that are being pushed over there? What are the economic advancements and models that are put there? And learn what you can about about markets here, like the fundamentals. Pick up a book by Mises, pick up a book by F.A. Hayek or Muriel Rothbard to understand the credit, how it really is supposed to work. Understand bubbles. It's very important. Like you got to have a pragmatic thing. I mean, most people that I work with are very dogmatic, and I'm like, look, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're like, oh, yeah, I deal with clients that are like, oh, I don't want to get involved in the stock market. It's all bubbles. It's all fake. I'm like, yeah, it's fake, but it's fake that could actually produce real income for you so you can make enough money to get you and your family out of harm's way, So you have to be pragmatic. You have to learn. It's not easy. Okay? You're going to have to beat your head. You're going to have to take your head, slam it against your desk several times, and learn this material. It's more important than sports. It's more important than social media. It's more important than anything else because you start learning this, and you don't have to know all about it. But understand how precious metals works. Understand how cryptocurrencies work. Understand how governments work. Understand how trade works. And understand what industries are hot. And then you could start positioning yourself for some serious growth and advancement.
Okay, so you say that the America doesn't have much exports. Well, exports trash, but I invest quite a bit in my about 24% of my portfolio is invested in US stocks. So there's companies like and Apple. IRO, which is manufactures electric vehicles. I don't invest in Tesla. I think it's overpriced.
Oh yeah, big time.
I invest in a bit of pharmacy stuff like Athenix, which is a cancer treatment. I believe in that. But I'm not really sure what you mean by the US. The US does export a lot of stuff.
Oh, they do. I mean, the biggest exports. When you look at the biggest exports, actually trash. Trash and recyclables are our biggest exports. You know, it's not what the pharmaceutical companies are doing and the stock. I mean, taking point of this, it's a known fact, and this is a very conservative estimate. It is a known fact that 40% of the companies that are on the Dow make no money. They make no money.
The growth stocks projected to eventually make some profits, I guess. Well,
eventually, but it's all. But you take the central bank plug, you pull that plug, right, and then what happens? The stimulus is gone, and much of the innovation and hype and hoopla is gone as well. Like case in point, look at Apple, right? $1 trillion company based on one SKU. If iPhone sales crater in one quarter, Apple's in a lot of trouble. Yeah, they're cash flush, right? And they do have some, you know, there are rumors and developments in terms of what is it called? Cloud computing, AI, and all these other things, right? Mm-hmm. But they are dependent on one SKU. Look at Tesla, right? Tesla for several decades. I've been telling I've been telling clients about Tesla for forever. I was like, look, this is a carbon trading company masquerading as a vehicle manufacturer. Okay, $1 trillion valuation, right? And again, all these valuations are really fictitious. It's all
was it 3 trillion, almost.
Tesla's valuation.
Yeah,
I don't even remember. I think it's like $1 trillion something. I think it was. I don't know what the latest count is.
I'll look it up for you quickly on eToro here. Market cap 1 trillion.
Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
it's insane.
I'm thinking of Apple. Sorry.
Yeah, you know, so it's the most craziest thing in the world. It makes no sense, right?
Yeah.
And what happens when you're in a country where your real estate market is dependent upon central bank manipulation and central bank money printing? You don't have an economy. When you're in a country where your equities market is dependent upon central bank meddling, you don't have an economy. When you're in a country where your bond market is dependent upon central bank meddling, you don't have an economy. And in the U.S., if the Fed were to be taken out of the equation, the whole house of cards comes apart. A lot of these stock valuations are insanity. Like, for instance, people always say to me, hey, V, why does guys like Jeff Bezos blast off in a cock rocket all the way up to space, right? I mean, literally, the man has a phallic-shaped rocket, and he's blasting off into space. And they're trying to push space exploration. And it's great, and it creates publicity. Publicity does one thing, good or bad, right? Especially if it's good. Publicity does one thing. It gets you a higher market cap. And once you have a higher market cap, that is something that you leverage in terms of, you can leverage as credit, you can leverage as whatnot to either A, do more R&D, or B, do more stock buybacks, which is what a lot of these companies are doing. So what's remarkable with all the money printing that's been going on and whatnot, we're seeing evidence of capital malformation. We're seeing evidence of credit markets crunching. We're seeing evidence of liquidity crisis that is happening, right? Very illiquid players out there, and everybody is banking on that one day this company that's valued at 500 billion or 200 billion, whatever random company on the Dow, is going to be worth $1 trillion 10 years from now. Okay. It's insanity. And that's the problem when you have what's called a fire economy, right? When you have an economy where, in a healthy economy, finance, insurance, real estate, fire for short, would be 10 to 20% of your total economy. This is the complete inverse here in the United States and much of the West. There's not real physical production. And therefore, they still have to keep pushing these fictitious numbers in order to create this fantasy.
Wait a minute. Fire economy means, and I'm just looking it up on Investopedia, finance, insurance, real estate. And you're saying that it's 90% now?
No, I'm not saying it's 90%. What I'm saying, it's like it's in a healthy economy, it should be like 20%, 15-20% of the total economy. But it's not. Over here, it's like the majority.
Really?
Right? And they'll say like the manufacturing figures, which are terrible, and they'll count that. And again, there's a lot of accounting gymnastics that happens with GDP numbers and the economic numbers here in the United States. They will say, oh, manufacturing is 20-30% of the economy, blah blah blah. It's really not. And it's not manufacturing of anything major or anything big. It's a big problem. So we've gutted our manufacturing base, right? And so this is a problem where we're dependent on everything. And the fire economy is taking over everything. And people talk about the Green New Deal or the Great Reset, right? What is the Great Reset? And you look at the green energy policies and the Green New Deal, it is further deindustrialization, right? It's further deindustrialization. Why would you want further deindustrialization? Because the fire economy, right? And all the purveyors of the fire economy, which is basically the major banks do not make money on physical production anymore, right? They make money on speculation. So if we're transitioning from a physical production-based economy, and we go into a green-based economy where everything's based on carbon credits and carbon outputs and whatnot, you have at that point more speculation because you can create a whole bunch of exotic investment vehicles and derivatives based on this and trade the hell out of it. And that's what Wall Street's doing. That's what the city of London's gravitating towards. And this is what they want to do. Because, look, fiat currency is running to its end at this point.
Did the banks ever manufacture something physical?
Yeah, a debit card. In the last 100 years, Nico, okay, the only thing that banks have given you is an ATM debit card. Okay, that's the only thing they manufactured.
And paper, because I ordered some bank statements and that, and,
bank statements.
And the website was so old that they wouldn't let me export from 3 years ago. So they literally sent me 12 envelopes, and I'm taking pictures of this stuff, man. They're like, oh.
But you want to know something? In the last 100 years, right? Even though they're only giving you bank statements and an ATM debit card, right? But what they've done in the last 100 years, they found some of the most creative ways to rob, rape, and pillage the economies in the countries that they inhabit. It's incredible. It's incredible what they've done. So we are dependent on the fire economy here in the United States and in much of the West. Okay, and if the very structure of banks, ever since we got rid of Glass-Steagall in '99, when Bill Clinton, when I was leaving office, I made sure, Nico, that I took my cigars, I took Monica's dress, and I got rid of Glass-Steagall. You know, so Clinton made sure. So so what happens is this, folks. We got rid of Glass-Steagall in '99.
Impressions crack me up.
Dude, I could do further. Don't let me go to Obama. I'll do that next. So we go from Glass-Steagall, right? '99, it's gone. And then what happened in 2001? We have the dot-com crash, right? And what people don't realize, with every single crash and downturn, 2001 crash, 2008 crash, the banks are becoming more and more fundamentally and regulatorily changed to no longer support a physical economy. Here's the greatest evidence of it. Here's why the fire economy is an anathema to the physical economy and physical production, and why the banks structurally do not support a physical economy anymore. What is right now the savings rate in a CD bank right now, in a CD account? I don't know what it is in the UK, but in the US, it's a joke. It's like 0.001%, right?
What's a CDA account?
Like a certificate of deposit, like a savings account, right? I don't know what you guys have in the UK. I forget what you guys have.
Certificate of deposit. That's where somebody could actually, what the physical paper is, the ownership, and if you give it to somebody, they can take the money from.
No, it would be like a certificate of deposit would be like a CD would be like you park money into an account that you can't touch for X amount of years, and it gains a certain percentage of interest.
All right, okay.
So in the U.S., it's like 0.001%. It used to park money when we had a physical economy in the 60s and 70s, when we had a real robust, even up to the 80s, you could put money in a savings account, and it's gaining you 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8%. It was enough to outpace inflation. But now it's not, right? Now it's like 0.0001% interest, and then you have, 1% tax on top of it. So it's a net drain. It's a net drain on the account, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't benefit savers. That doesn't benefit a physical production-based economy. That benefits speculation because you've made money so damn cheap to borrow for banks and for speculation purposes. That is one of the biggest dead giveaways of this whole entire thing, right? So this is the problem that the West is facing, and this is the problem with what we're seeing with this. Ever since COVID and whatnot. I don't know if we can say COVID on your broadcast. What's your you have any
It's fine. You can say it all you want.
Oh, good, great. Because I say COVID, I get put in the penalty box on YouTube. But
I've already been kicked off of LinkedIn, so it's okay.
That's good. Okay. You're on the right track, man. You're doing the right thing. Only when you've been kicked off all platforms, then you can truly be victorious. That is a mark of success these days.
Yeah, but LinkedIn are weird. I mean, they don't want to delete my data. I messaged them saying, like, why don't you just delete my data? But we need it for our global distribution of services or something like that. But I would still like it back because I had like a lot of connections on there, And I was just sharing stuff and some ideas, and Mr. Gates behind it just doesn't like me what I'm posting,
That is right. I mean, Microsoft owns them, right, or something?
Yeah, Microsoft owns LinkedIn. It's annoying. I mean, I work with Microsoft Technologies, my day job sometimes. So,
Jesus, unreal. But yeah, I mean, that's the situation we have in this world. We're literally seeing two emerging systems coming forward, man. It's kind of nuts, actually. It's also exciting and scary at the same time.
Yeah, you've got an interesting thing you write at the bottom of your emails. The Guerrilla Economist, banking was conceived in iniquity and born in sin. Joshua Stamp. Who's that guy?
Former head of the BOE, I believe.
Okay.
Josiah Stamp?
Yeah.
Former head of the BOE, if I'm not mistaken.
That's a conflict of interest. Banking was conceived in iniquity and born in sin, and I'm running the BOE.
Yeah, he left the when was he a BOE? He was he served in the BOE. Oh my God, what was it? I forgot when he retired, but yeah, he was the guy but again, he was an old school banker. I mean, he came out of the rail industry, right? He was somebody who came down to manufacturing and various other industries and rail, all these other civil projects and whatnot. So this is a guy, again, a physical production guy, goes to the BOE and he's like, holy cow, I'm in a den of vipers, man.
1880 to 1941.
There you go.
Short life.
Yeah.
60 years, dang.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've got a few topics that I want to try and get through here. Things that I've sort of picked up from some of your videos. I guess I'll just list them, and we can just sort of pick out some. So some of the things that I've discovered is basically crazy PE ratios in America's and US markets. Number 2, only criminals are attracted to government. Why is tax never revoked? How do we reconcile the Bible's view on government versus what we see? Why nerds have little humanity? Why men have high testosterone in World War II? Yeah, that's pretty much interesting topics. I wonder what we should start off with first. Why is tax never revoked?
That's the thing. The very nature of the state, the very nature of government is that once they begin to enact a tax or a regulation or whatnot, they never get rid of it. They never get rid of it. And what occurs is that when you look at, I remember there was a story that I read years ago. This was, I believe, in North Carolina or South Carolina. They had some sort of a flood. I think this was in the 1930s or the 20s, I believe it was. They had some sort of a flood and destroyed a village, a small town or a village that was in South Carolina or some state, right? Let's just go with South Carolina. I mean, I could be 100% wrong, but the gist of the message remains the same. So what happens is that this village gets destroyed, right? And so in order to help rebuild, the government came in and they instituted they called it a temporary tax to rebuild this village. Okay. And it was some sort of a reconstruction tax, they called it. And what happened is they instituted the tax, and lo and behold, it's 2022. And brother, that tax is still there.
No.
This is the nature of government, right? Because people always talk about a separation of powers and checks and balances, but there is no checks and balances. The very nature of a bureaucracy is once a bureaucracy has been created, and its purpose or the initial reason why the bureaucracy was created is already taken care of, and that crisis has passed. That bureaucracy never goes away. it becomes the bureaucracy's self-interest to constantly propagate and or create scenarios and situations in which its need is always justified. And that's what we've seen. Look how bloated the US government is. It is massively bloated. Look how bloated the UK government is. Massively bloated. The French government, massively bloated. And none of these governments across the Western world are efficiently run. They are bloated bureaucracies. They're inefficient. They're obsolete in the way that they handle things. They're slow to react. And they are nothing but cesspools with a parasitic drain that does nothing well. Government does nothing well. There's only two things that government is good at doing, and that's stealing and killing. They're very good at that. But try to go get a license from your local motor vehicles department and wait online. You see how effective government is.
Okay, so you say that inefficient. I guess we could talk about some healthcare systems, but the UK health system apparently is rated as one of the most efficient in the world, and it's a socialist healthcare system.
Well, I mean, the NHS, again, I can't comment on the NHS. I too have heard NHS is done efficiently, and I'm not like saying that, hey, you know what, you should look. I've always said this. I believe in advanced built economies having some sort of a safety net for a citizen's health and healthcare should be a given. Like I'm for that, right? There should be something given in order that there's a safety net for people so they're not financially ruined. Like in the UK, you're not financially ruined if you have a health crisis, right? You need to go for cancer treatment, or you have a broken arm, or God forbid an accident. Right? Yeah, you're not ruined financially. You just go take care of it. You have a baby, you go take care of it, right? And NHS takes care of that. In the U.S., as an example, the average person is 2 paychecks away from being homeless, number one. And majority of people face financial ruin if they have a medical emergency, even if they have insurance. There are times where insurance companies will not cover the incident that has occurred, right? Or they might not cover you because, you had a pre-existing condition. It's a travesty that this is so in the U.S. And then the U.S. will gloat, we have the best healthcare system in the world. No, we don't. We don't. We have the most wasteful healthcare system in the world, where we're spending more per citizen on healthcare than any other country in the world. We have the worst healthcare. It's travesty. It's an absolute terrible joke, right? But healthcare aside, right, NHS aside, when you look at like other things that government does, right, in terms of either passing laws that are anti-freedom, anti-economic activity, you anti-insert topic here, right? It's very lengthy. When you look at other things that government does, it's very inefficient. Okay, a lot of the taxes, the regulations are things that are absolutely choking and stifling innovation and investment. So those things that government does terribly bad.
Okay. It still is like we don't have knowledge of all the governments at the same time in our mind, so I'm very careful about using statements that would basically class every government in a certain ways. That's why. But it does seem to me strange that taxes are not revoked, because you'd think that is it like a human problem? Is it an ego problem, or is it just the institution of government that just?
I think what happens is government gets away with what you allow it to get away with, and I can only speak for here in the United States. Case in point, most people in the U.S. are either asleep or they're too busy living life and paying bills and raising families to really pay attention to what's happening. Right? One of our founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, said it best. Right? He said this. He said, "It's a republic if you can keep it." And we all know that line. Many Americans know that line. It's a republic if you can keep it. What they often forget is the other half of that statement. And he said this, and it's for a vigilant and moral and upright citizenry. The problem with Americans today is like we're not vigilant anymore. Right? We're not paying. I mean, I give credence to the French. I mean, my God, bus fare goes up 50 cents or, they're out there protesting, They're out there like on the doorsteps of Macron's presidential palace. But in the U.S., nobody is paying attention. And they only have a knee-jerk reaction when there is a midterm election or a federal nationwide election. Then they think they could vote somebody in who's going to fix all the problems. But the average American doesn't take a step back and look at the whole entire situation and realize the problem is an entrenched bureaucracy that's been sitting there for decades, and it's growing and it's festering and it's cancerous. It's a big problem here.
Mm-hmm. So if we sort of break this down as a thought experiment, why taxes are not revoked? So everything happens as a result of a cumulative action of individual people in government. So if somebody gets elected to, say, I don't know, as a governor or some politician, then what is it in it for them to remove that tax? You think that it would gain them favor with their electorate. So you think it would be a force to sort of bring down taxes, you'd imagine, on bureaucracy,
Right. There's been many politicians who've been elected on the popular idea of cutting taxes, and whatever taxes are cut, okay, it's pretty interesting. If you were to graph federal revenue the last 100 years in the United States, federal revenue has only gone up. It's gone up significantly and exponentially, right? And it's not just because of the fact that the economy was growing, this, that, and the other, and we could argue the metrics on that. But the fact remains, even though politicians will campaign on, I'm going to cut taxes, they'll cut taxes, but it's always temporary. There's never been a tax cut in the United States that is permanent. It's almost as if they're throwing a bone, right, to the population. In other words, okay, you know what? For the last 30 years, we've taxed you at 30%. Okay, so this year we're going to tax you at 25%, and then for 4 years everybody's celebrating. Okay, we've got a 25% tax rate, but the next administration that comes in, all of a sudden the taxes and the regulations are back. So whatever taxes are repealed or cut is only a temporary stopgap measure. It's never permanent, right? And then, like the example I gave you about the village and the reconstruction tax, that never goes away. There are myriad. If you do some, do like a thorough Google search or you look into it, there are thousands upon thousands of taxes that were created 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years ago based on some sort of a crisis or an event or something that occurred. And those taxes are still there. There's a great deal of apathy. I think there's a great deal of lack of education as to how government even operates in this country, right? And so most people in the United States, they don't know this. They're not paying attention to this. They're not made aware of this, and they lack the educational know-how because they're not taught this into looking at, hey, let's look at government waste. If the average American looked at government waste, they will be hanging politicians from lampposts tomorrow evening, but they don't. It's a travesty. I mean, literally, it's almost like Stockholm syndrome, right? Where you've been abused so much that all you know is your abuser, right? You've been poked, you've been prodded, you've been put through this prisoner of war type mentality. You just get used to it. So the average American, look at their income tax rates. The income tax rates have exploded, right? The amount of tax that the government takes from revenues is grown exponentially, and yet the average American is not doing what a French citizen does. He's not out in the streets of Washington, D.C. demanding it be cut, demanding something happen. No. What happens every year, and you can set your watch by it, every year over year, Americans pay more for less and less service in return. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why taxes are never revoked. It benefits these bureaucracies.
It's interesting that what Elon Musk is coming out with now, like government has the monopoly on violence. And I never really felt threatened by a government until I was living in Austria. And that now they're coming out with this facts. You're going to be fined or put in jail. That for me really woke me up. And I don't think I will be able to recover my trust in government as long as I live now after that one. Because if that, maybe it's just Austria, but I don't know. I mean, if it spreads to Germany, Italy, it could be the whole European Union, and the European Commission.
How about this? No NHS service for you if you're not vaxxed.
Yeah, that's I want my refund on my taxes and my national insurance.
Think about it. Yeah. I mean, look, in Australia, they're throwing people in concentration camps and they're calling it resilience centers. And I fell off my chair And in Melbourne and in other places in Australia where they're putting people in these quote unquote resilience centers. And I fell off my chair because, oh my God, that's what Hitler and the Nazis called Auschwitz. They called them resilience centers.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, resilience centers. That's the initial resilient camps or something like that. But the word resilience, I mean, look it up. The word resilience was used in that. It was incredible. I was like, holy crap! And I'm like, my God, this is what they're doing. So what the heck is going on here in the West? You see, the government that can give you everything can also has the power to take away everything, and that's dangerous. Why? Because there's no checks and balances with government. The people need to be hyperactively engaged with their government, where the government fears the people, and the people should never ever fear the government. We in the Western world have that completely inversed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my faith in European politics is shaken. I think a couple of days before the European Union voted on the Green Pass, I emailed as many Austrian politicians as I could be bothered finding emails to say, this is shocking. Please don't vote for this. And do you know how many I got back responses? I think zero. I'm a European citizen as well. It just wasn't worth their time. Like these people are voting on my human rights. So,
well, who do they answer to? They answer to the unelected European Union body politic. They answer to those bureaucrats who are not elected, that you don't select, right? So you have this illusion of choice and freedom and quote unquote democracy, which at this point is a euphemism for communism for all I care, right? And this is what they're doing. It's in their financial interests in order to do this. Why? Because this is part of their grander scheme. Get you on a green pass eventually connect you to some sort of a social credit score, and then from there, create a derivative based upon Nikos's life that can be traded on a stock exchange somewhere as a derivative based on how many carbon credits Nico and his family is able to procure and or create within the course of their lifetime. That's the ultimate goal. It's speculation on top of speculation on top of speculation.
There does seem to be the groundwork of a social credit system. But if you were to ask me what does the average MEP have to gain from that, then I would probably say there isn't really anything. It sounds like they're being told from above how to vote and stuff like that. Because as far as I'm concerned, an MEP is still a pawn, that can be controlled.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like a congressman and or a politician, senator, or anybody else like that that is bought by lobbyists here in the United States. I mean, you look at the lobbying groups; they control everything. They control the foreign policy. They control the think tanks, the roundtable groups, and they dictate exactly what policies are put in place and what the congressmen and the senators would do here in the United States. Same thing happens in Europe. All these MPs are all voted and paid for. Look. The problem in Europe is the same problem I always say all the time here in the United States, right? The majority of our politicians are lawyers. They're lawyers. All of them have law degrees. Like 99% of them are all lawyers. They're not scientists. They're not engineers. They're not captains of industry. These are not our brightest, minds at work here, right? You're talking about some of the most idiot, moronic people who have law degrees who are indoctrinated in some of the most bizarre far left schools with the most stupid, most obsolete, inane ideas. And they're out there making laws. They're out there, being working for the public good, so to speak. And every decade, Western quality of life is exponentially worse. Terrible. The people in Western countries right now should be in the streets dragging their politicians out of their offices and holding their feet to the fire. I mean, my God, beat them, not to death, but close enough to death so they understand that they can be touched. I mean, there's no other way to put it. It's unreal, man. I mean, case in point, Nico, Washington State here in the U.S., right? They're passing a law, which they drafted on October 25th, 2019. In October 25th of 2019, they drafted a law that had to do with a pandemic and how they need to build detention centers, kind of like how they have in Australia for this pandemic, and creating what's called action task forces to go into people's houses, separating families, including children as young as 5 years old, to have them in detention centers for up to 30 days. Okay. Drafted and certified law, Washington State, October 25th, 2019. right before the pandemic. What was the first? Where was the first recorded case of coronavirus in the United States? Well, it happened on January 20th, 2020, right in Seattle, Washington State.
Yeah,
So
it's just so
these are
crazy, like that building that collapsed after the Twin Towers, like a demolition, it's just so, it's so in your face that something doesn't seem right at all. And they had that whole pandemic playthrough before, it's people, these are the kind of questions that politicians need to answer, because I posted that on City AM. I wrote an article for them. It says these politicians need to talk about these things. And these what the mainstream would class as conspiracy theories, but politicians need to have answers for them. And by
and they
them
never
not
will.
dealing with them, people are just getting angrier and angrier. There's no, I don't see any good reason why the nobody can explain politician wise why they created that playthrough of a pandemic just before the pandemic happened. There's no good answer for that. That should be clear.
Right. I mean, think about it. I mean, nobody puts the two and two together. Why did on October, the same month, October 2019, the same month that Washington codified and made active this law, why is it that in that same month, Bill Gates and a whole other horde of individuals created this thing called Event 201?
Horde.
Event 201, yeah. Event 201. And coincidentally, Event 201 has to do with a global pandemic utilizing a coronavirus.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make this stuff up, man. Like at some point, people need to get their heads out of their rear ends and heads out of their sands and be like, "Oh, something needs to happen." And none of the politicians. This is the problem with the West. You cannot look at politicians as heroic people. They're not. They're cowards. A lot of people in the United States made this mistake in during the 2020 elections here in the United States. Right? They thought that politician so and so is going to come to the rescue. We're going to prove the election fraud. We're going to do this. We're going to do that, and nothing happened. Why? Because people make the mistake that politicians are courageous. They're not courageous. These are some of the most self-interested, self-preserving groups of cowards you'll ever meet in your life. So now we have a double problem. Not only are there a bunch of lawyers lacking any sort of geopolitical skills whatsoever, they're not statesmen, they're not real diplomats, they're idiots. Okay, and on top of that, they're cowards. So it's a double whammy. It's a terrible combination, the worst of both worlds. And that's what we're facing here. Unless we change the system, because the system is going to collapse, it's heading that way. And unless we change the system where we create a form of government that is going to be 100% accountable to the citizenry, where there is no secrecy, there's absolute transparency on where the money's going. I don't need to know about secret black projects and this, that, and the other, or you got a manned mission to Mars, or you dissecting aliens in some military. I don't care about that, right? I want to know where the money's going. I want to know where, if we can do that and then eliminate special interests in government. Here in the United States, we call it lobbying. In the UK and in Europe, I don't know what you guys call it over there, but the special interest, the special money interest, and to stop that from interfering into elections. Then on top of that, also create some sort of meritocracy where every single politician, whether it's an MP, a congressman, a senator, what have you, when they get to public office, they have three distinct goals. Number one, eliminate poverty. Number two, increase the quality of life for the citizenry in your district that you are the MP of, or the congressman or the senator of. And number three, do something to ensure the betterment of your country as a whole, economically speaking. If we can do that and have real measurable metrics in minutia and in detail on what they need to achieve, and if they don't achieve it, get rid of them. If they achieve it, then they get reelected. But we don't do that. These guys get elected, they promise a lot for the citizenry, and they do nothing. And that's the problem.
I wouldn't say that in the UK politicians are cowards. I mean, I've met some of them. I can say that probably in the EU, there seems like there's more, because none of them responded to my, semi demands on don't vote for this green passport. I mean, in the UK, being a politician is classed as public service, and you do live on risky ground as a politician, because you can lose your seat pretty quickly. You can lose the slightest bad thing in the media about you can be forced to resign. So I'm not that deep in politicians. I mean, in politics, I was asked to go kind of deep in politics at one point, to go up the levels of the Tory party council and stuff like that. But I didn't want to do it. It was too much of a sacrifice for me. So I don't know what it's like in America. Maybe America being a politician is the easier life or something.
Oh my God! Once it's the easiest path to becoming a millionaire.
Oh, really?
I mean, there's no reason why Nancy Pelosi, who is on a government salary of $180,000 a year, is worth tens of millions, 50 million, $100 million. God only knows, right? There's no reason. How does Dianne Feinstein goes in and now she's out of out of politics and now she's worth $200 million? I mean, how does this happen?
Post election benefits, I guess. Business.
I mean, it's ridiculous, and they have access in the United States. If you're a politician, you have access to insider trading information. Information that if you and I were to have in the U.S., we'd go to jail. But they're allowed to have it, right? I mean, Hillary Clinton made tens of millions of dollars off of, when she was a senator, she made tens of millions of dollars off of cattle's futures.
And they're not subject to the insider trading laws?
They're not subject to insider trading laws.
That's crazy, man. That's a big crime. I'm very careful with stocks and if what I'm invested in a company and I'm working for them or something.
Right.
Even if I just don't like to invest in things that I'm working with, even if it's public information, because it's just that's dangerous. But I don't know.
But they do it here. See, it's rules for thee, but not for me. See, they're the oligarchs, and that's the mentality that they have over us. We know what's best. We're the oligarchs. So there is a penchant among a lot of these Malthusian-influenced Western politicians, and that is they want to have this return to a neo-feudalism. They would love that. If there's a ruling, elected class, and then we have us, the proletariat, the proletariats who are on the bottom.
It feels good, right? I mean, it's like going to a 5-star resort and everyone's just handing you food all the time, and you press the button and they come to your door.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you want to live like that if you could?
Right. Exactly right, man. It's unbelievable, brother. Unbelievable.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to these meaty topics, shall we? So we've covered politicians, taxes. Let's see. So obviously, okay. So the Bible has a view, and I think your worldview is Christian.
Yes.
How do we reconcile what the Bible says with obey your masters according to the flesh, and the government's there as the God's rod for, and with what we see with defending our freedoms and stuff like that? Because that's the trouble I have as well. It's maybe being a good Christian speaking out against this stuff.
Yeah, you have to. You got to. When the Scripture talks about government, it's talking about good government, right? Righteous government that is just government, right? Government that punishes criminals, right? Government that punishes fraudsters and hucksters, those who decide to prey upon the weak and fleece the wealth of a nation and or individuals, right? That's what the government is there for, and to protect the rights and liberties of the people that live in there. That's righteous government. What we have today in much of the world, especially in the United States, we don't have righteous government anymore.
Yeah.
And there's one thing that Christ has said. He says, be as wise as serpents and gentle as doves, right? And I think Christians have forgotten that. They've taken a very laissez-faire approach. Oh, government is from God. We can't question it's what God's will is. It's this fatalistic thing that puts them in a position where they've become very laissez-faire. They've become powerless in doing anything. What they should be doing is let's look at the examples from Scripture. Look at the established government under look what happened when.
Hey, you're not taking a leak, are you?
No.
What's that noise in the back?
No, it's you know what? I have pipes that run through the ceiling of my office. Right. That's what you're hearing. I apologize.
Just for my listeners, what's he doing? He's doing a podcast. He's dropping a load,
He's right now on the urinal, just talking while he's live streaming. That's hilarious. Jeez, I hope it shuts off. Yeah, that's the thing about this office, man. I got to install more soundproofing because I got pipes that run directly above, and it's like this one giant pipe that runs right over the ceiling, and I can hear it. I'm like, geez, Louise. Usually, wow, that's funny. That's hilarious. I apologize. Minus the urinal sounds in the background, folks, the peeing sounds. It's not me peeing. It's a water pipe that's above me. I apologize. So getting back to that, here's an example, right? When you had my God, my memory is a little fading here, but the king under the prophet Elijah, right? Who was that?
Ahab.
Ahab, right? Correct. Ahab and his crazy wife Jezebel, right?
Oh yeah, she was a right.
Oh
Oh
my
dear.
God, she is what you find on Instagram these days. But so you have Ahab. He's the established government, right? What did Elijah do? He absolutely railed against Ahab. What did David do against Saul? Right? Railed against Saul. What I mean, you've seen examples all throughout the Old Testament. You've seen what happened when then you had Elisha against the government. You had Amos. You had prophets that rose up against the established power, the established government that is in Israel. What did Jesus do with the government in Israel? The Sanhedrin. He called the Sanhedrin, the Jewish government there that was established. He called them a brood of vipers, right? He called them a den of vipers. He called them an untoward generation. That's what he called them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you see examples of that where there's injustice, where there's inequality, where there's evil taking place. My God, you're supposed to rail against it. But somehow I don't know how it is in Europe or in the UK, but here in the US, the churches have kind of like the majority of them. I'm going to say all of them, but I say the vast majority of them have taken a blind eye to this. They're like, oh, that's for something else or for someone else. We should, government's from God. It is what it is. It's a laissez-faire and extremely lazy attitude for Christians to have. Christians should be at the forefront. We should be the tip of the spear in exposing all of this stuff. We should be the tip of the spear in resisting. We should be in the tip of the spear in not taking a step back from culture, but by engaging culture. We don't do that.
I think it's also to do with a lot with there's no persecution like the good old days in a sense,
Yeah.
Like
That's coming, man.
I saw a video. I think it was in. I don't know if I should talk about this, but I saw a video someone sent me on. I believe it was. I've forgotten the name. Myanmar, and there was a Christian village. It was torched, and they had all these Christians burnt on this pile. I don't know if they burnt alive or not. And one of the soldiers was. They had a video of this soldier, and he was still alive, and he chopped both his arms off, and he's sitting there, and they hacked half his legs off. So like his sort of legs are just sort of hanging on by a tendons, and he's sitting there with his arms just cut off from like just below the shoulder. Yeah. And you just see this guy. He's a Christian, and eventually he's 15 minutes later. He it took him 15 minutes to die, but I just like this horrible thing to happen woke me up quite a bit. You just like the reality of what.
Yeah, man. Satan's there, bro.
Yeah, just we're just so insulated in our long peace right now that I think the church is just.
The church is asleep. Yeah. If they're not asleep, they've been subverted. And that's the problem. There's like no righteous indignation anymore. There's no, you look at most churches in the West, especially like here in the United States, I'll speak from my experiences here. It's run by women and beta males. There's no other way to put, there's no like warriors. There's no guys who are, at the forefront. Like, my exposure to Christendom came from guys like David Wilkerson. Like I found Christ in Times Square Church in New York back in like the late 90s, and that was in, that time, David Wilkerson. That guy you go on YouTube, listen to like some of the sermons that guys like, Pastor David Wilkerson would speak about. My God, you want to talk about fire? Whew. My God, I remember being a young Christian. The guy would give like altar calls. He give altar calls for drug addicts. And I'm running down there. I'm not even a drug addict. If you're a murderer or a former convict, I'm like running down there. Whatever it was, because it's just the message was hard hitting, man. Nobody speaks like that anymore. It's very rare for hard, and everything's feel good. Everything's that Joel Osteen, Hillsong's, milquetoast, limp-wristed, wet noodle Christianity. I hate it. It's disgusting. And you go to like most churches, like you listen to like these worship songs, it's annoying. Oh, I love you. You're the greatest thing in my. I'm like, dude, are you singing about Jesus or are you singing about your date from last night?
Yeah. We need proper instruments. Like we need like trombones and proper like I don't know. I play guitar. I play bass guitar sometimes in churches, but it annoys me as well. I don't like a lot of the
the
lovey-dovey
latest
songs, you know what I'm
contemporary.
saying?
It's dude, it's like copy and paste. You could play the majority of these modern Christian songs. You could play it on mainstream radio. Nobody would be able to tell the difference. It's like I'm
Yeah.
like, I listen to Christian rap. I'm like, all right, cool. And there's some great Christian rap artists, right? Like back from like when the '90s, dude. These guys had the word. They had they had a lock on scripture. I mean, my God. I mean, they'll go through they'll rap about the Trinity. I mean, it's just hard hitting, man. Like one of the guys I used to listen to back in the '90s was a guy called Ambassador. You look up his stuff, you can still find it here and there on Spotify. It is hardcore, man. It is like hardcore scripture. I'm like, my God, it'll slap you in the face. I love it. Now it's just like everything's low key. The name of God is not mentioned. Christ is not mentioned. It could be anything. It's like you could blast it in your car really loud, and you would blend right in. Nobody would even take notice. It's like, are you like undercover? Like, what are you doing? You know, it's terrible, man. This is the state that we're living in. It's terrible.
I think we're in a state where we're sort of in a sort of thick fog that's keeping us asleep, you know, like in the Matrix, and we're just like going through life, going through the motions, going through our religion, and we're just being drugged to sleep, like with Xboxes and all the entertainments, and we're missing out on this reality of God and His power and what He wants with us. You know, like the
Yeah.
relationship should be so deep, and we're just content with once a month going to church, and that's it. We tick off our religious box, you know.
Yeah, exactly. That's basically what it comes down to, man. Basically what it comes down to.
Okay, so moving on. Uh, Nerds and big tech. Why do nerds have little humanity?
I think nerds have little humanity because they're nerds. They spend most of their time in their books and in their studies. They have very little human interaction. And what occurs is that oftentimes they're victims of either bullying or social awkwardness. You know, a lot of these nerds are not, socially developed. Like nobody's taking the time to mentor them and be like, look, you could be a nerd. You could be somebody who loves tech and who loves engineering and the sciences, but you don't have to be socially awkward. And I think two things need to happen. Nerds need to have the social conditioning to fit into society, and society needs to have the conditioning in order to deal with nerds. Otherwise, you have psychopaths like Bill Gates running vaccine programs globally. That's what happens.
It's crazy, isn't it, man?
I mean, this is the guy who invented an operating system that he stole from Xerox, and he's the king of computer viruses, but all of a sudden now he's a virology expert.
Yeah, 20 times a turn. It's great, fantastic, you know.
Yeah. Psychopath. That's what happens. Folks, if you don't society needs to take care of the mentally insane, the mentally, those who need mental health and mental help, right? And society needs to take care of the nerds and the incels. If you don't take care of the nerds and the incels, okay, then what is going to happen is they will eventually turn into a Bill Gates or a Mark Zuckerberg or one of these idiots at Google, and terrible things happen, right? Or we turn into one of those morons on Twitter or social media platforms, and terrible things happen. Things happen to free speech because all of a sudden it's the revenge of the nerds, but with gulags. That's what we're living in. It's the revenge of the nerds. The movie The Revenge of the Nerds, but with gulags.
What really annoys me about some of these big tech software developers and that is they just go in with all this whole pronouns thing and like all this BLM tags on their GitHub repositories.
You know why? It sells, man. It sells. It sells because look, these guys are not about innovation. It's about creating a BS program, right? That is absolute BS that does nothing, right? That is basically vaporware based on a white paper that's based on nothing. And then selling the idea to a big tech company so they can be just acclimated or taken over, and then the stock price goes up. It has nothing to do with real innovation. Nothing to do with it.
Yeah, I self-ostracized myself from an Austrian tech society. I just basically, I was just so annoyed with what the government in Austria is doing, like basically forcing students to get tested every 2 days if they're not like vaccinated, and like I was worried that basically people were going to be priced out of the universities because if the tests weren't free. And then I basically went onto this programming group and ranted about it. And one of the mods was like, "Don't, this is off topic." I just flipped out, man. And then I just basically quit it. You know, I just can't deal with people being silent in the face of injustice like that. You know, so
I mean, dude. I mean, honestly speaking, it's like you need to get out of where you are. I tell people in the United States, look, the United States is splitting in two. We're going to eventually be two countries. I have no doubt about it. I think the metrics are there, the data's there. It's going to continue to be further balkanized. We're getting, we call it red states and blue states, right? The liberal, left-leaning blue states versus the more conservative, more libertarian, more freedom-minded red states.
Yeah.
And I think it's a split that's happening. And I tell people all the time, look, you need to get into the right jurisdiction. You need to get into a jurisdiction where you're not bothered with the state and local government, where you have
could be good, man. It could be a good thing. Just split it up, and we'll see what prospers.
Exactly. I think it's the best thing that can happen because at this point in the U.S., culturally speaking, I think it's completely irreconcilable.
Yeah, I think so, mate.
There's no going back. There's no way I can sit across from a mask-wearing idiot from California who's been double jabbed and boosted and tell him that, hey, man, look, you need to think about liberties and freedom.
Double boosted, mate.
Double boosted, maybe 6 times boosted.
Windows Java Update 34 or something,
Yeah, exactly. We can't reconcile with these people. And the problem is, in our worldview, these people could live in our world because we don't bother them, because our philosophy is do what you want so long as you're not hurting children or animals. I don't care what you do, right? As long as you're doing it with a consenting adult, you're doing it in the privacy of your own home, I don't care, more power to you, right? So these crazy fools could live in our world, but we could never live in their world. Our existence bothers them. They want to put us in concentration camps. That's the problem.
Why would it bother? Why would our existence bother them?
Because, I mean, look, because we're a threat to their narrative. And unlike, us, look at people like us. The narrative to us is like, okay, it's a narrative, but we're not like, our narrative, our worldview is not something that we want to, force people on, right? It's not our style, right? But to them, their narrative is not only their worldview, their narrative is their religion.
Right, yeah.
So unless you're a devout adherent to their religion, then you have no place in their throng. They're the church of the branch Covidians. Okay. the branch Davidians, some Seventh-day Adventist. No, these are the branch Covidians. They're the Covidians. Their MAGA hat is the face mask.
Yeah, I bought a mask to annoy the people at the airports. What I show you this?
Oh yeah.
Like if they cannot tell me not to wear this thing, man. Look at it.
What in the world? Holy crud, man! What is that?
It's a new mask. It's an actual commercial thing, Actually, I was wearing masks before anybody else, believe it or not.
Oh, were you really?
Yeah, since 2009. I used to underground in London. I come home after an hour and that in the day, blow my nose, and it's black. And I started wearing these Respro face masks, and it was great.
Sure.
So I'll have a great time. Nobody will give me strange looks anymore. But I'll buy a mask that actually does the job. Like that thing there is like proper work. It's
all the filters,
and you can breathe out of it as well. It's got a one-way valve.
Oh wow.
They'll probably say, it doesn't protect your passenger next to you, but it protects me from suffocating myself with carbon dioxide with these proper.
Oh my god, that's hilarious. That's hilarious.
Here's another interesting topic that I heard in some of your shows. So you're saying that men had higher testosterone in World War II, and they didn't suffer much post-traumatic stress once they came back because the testosterone helped them encapsulate or segregate the experiences or something like that.
When you look at the male mind is an extremely compartmentalized mind for a reason, right? And when you couple that with high testosterone levels, like when you look at like ancient warfare where men were face-to-face, hand-to-hand combat with swords and knives and other types of stabbing weapons and blunt force trauma, they were in some of the most bloodiest things. And all the writings from warriors and people that have been through war in that time, nobody suffered from post-traumatic stress. They just dealt with it. And men have a capacity to, supposedly by design, we have a capacity that when we deal with trauma, we have a capacity to encapsulate it, compartmentalize it, and store it away in a dark recess of our brain so it doesn't affect our day-to-day lives. Okay? Now, it's a scientific fact that over the course of many, many decades, Western men across the Western world, especially here in the United States, their testosterone levels have been declining at a steady rate. It's been an absolute decline, alarmingly so. Okay? So what occurs today is you have less testosterone. The average American male is running anywhere between 250 to 300 nanograms of testosterone per deciliter of blood. That is the equivalent Right? And this is like a 25, 30-year-old American male. That's the equivalent of an 85-year-old man. Okay. His testosterone level should be at, 1,100, 1,200 nanograms per deciliter of blood, or at least 950, right? At least the bare minimum. This is a problem. This is why when you look at the issues that we have here with testicular cancer, the issues we have here with hormonal imbalances, the finding large amounts of estrogen in the male system here in the United States, when you look at the fact that most men here cannot deal with stress, cannot deal with trauma, a lot of them are reaching to pills or alcohol or suicide as a way out. We have a men's health crisis here, a serious men's health crisis. And if men's, and I think it's by design that they've done this, they lowered men's testosterone levels and also the quality of sperm motility. This is why the birth rates across the West are down considerably. Okay. If men were to get their testosterone levels back up, this global worldwide tyranny will end tomorrow, because strong men will say, hell no to this. They will stand up and they will literally stomp these tyrants to the ground.
So what sort of things can you do? Get more exercise, eat more healthy?
Yeah, exercise is key. I think the biggest thing you can do is get physically active, lift weights, man. I mean, most people don't like doing it, but look, learn how to make the squat rack your best friend. Learn how to start moving some serious, challenging weights. Develop, find some great exercise programs out there. There's some great, safe, and efficacious programs that are out. I mean, one of the websites I like is Mind Pump. There's not no paid advertising. Mind Pump is awesome. Those guys put together some great programs that are safe, efficacious. You type up what you want, and it'll spit out a really good quality exercise regimen for you based upon your experience in the gym. Diet is key. There's a push for veganism and vegetarianism, which is an absolute death sentence to sperm and testosterone numbers. You don't want to go that route. Red meat, and I'm not talking about slaughterhouse, hormone-filled cows. I'm talking about as organic as possible. The more organic red meats you can eat, as well as organ meats from cows and deer and venison, all these other things. I'm talking about not just the muscle meats like your steaks and whatnot, but also the livers and the kidneys and the hearts and all these other things like that. Those do wonders for men's testosterone levels. I mean, go on a red meat diet for 2 weeks, right? Where you're eating red meat, you're eating complex carbohydrates. I mean, everything from good hearty potatoes, cut with real butter, high in fiber carbohydrates and whatnot. Slow release, low glycemic carbs with red meat. Try it for 2 weeks. Watch your mental state. You're going to be waking up. You're not going to have the fog. People with autoimmune issues, those autoimmune system issues start resolving themselves. My God, you're going to be feeling better, doing better. Your spouse will be happier. The list goes on and on and on, man. The benefits are huge. And this is why they're trying to, blame cows for global warming. They want to, do everything to resolve you from eating animal products, which is the greatest thing you could consume, right? And here, eat some bugs for Thanksgiving. Here, make a tofu turkey. It's all part of the agenda, because a feminized man is of no threat to the establishment. Meanwhile, the elites get to eat all the meat they want.
Yeah, man. Fascinating. What about chicken? Is that bad for you or not good for you?
Which one?
What about chicken? Does that work? Or is it better to eat red meat?
Chicken's fine. Some people have allergies to chickens, believe it or not. If it's an organic, free-range chicken, it's fine having it once in a while, but it's not something that has all the nutrients. You look at red meat. Red meat has over 52 nutrients that you cannot find anywhere else. You can't find it in plants. You can't find it in other animals. And it's like a perfect link. It's like a puzzle piece, right? And it's a perfect puzzle link to your body's cells, everything that you need for your hormones, for your muscles, for your brain function, for your immune function. Everything is right there. It's like a superfood in a wonderful package.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool, man. Well, V, this has been absolutely fascinating. It's been really awesome to pick your brains. I am actually studying have you heard of this Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments?
I've heard of this, yes.
Yeah, I'm studying one of their level 3 courses there.
Nice.
I'm learning a lot of boring stuff I don't really care about, like life insurance policies and all these global institutions that sort of protect. I think they're useful, but I mean, it's like I have to do this course for this investing that I did. But yeah, it's interesting, man, a little bit as well. So, but anyway, I'm looking forward to having you back on the show again if you have time to pick your brains on just my own theories, man. Yeah.
Anytime you want me on, just let me know, brother. I'll be here with bells on.
I appreciate anything you want to leave us with before you go off to your next podcast or.
No, that's it. I mean, folks, you can check me out, roguenews.com, as well as check out Rogue News on YouTube. We're there pretty much every single day. So come check us out here and show love to Nikos as well. Nikos, if you ever want to come on, the door's open for you, brother, anytime you want.
Oh, appreciate it, brother. That's been an honor. Yeah, you got to check out his YouTube channel because he has some of the funniest. I'm just sketchy sometimes of some of his impressions of like the Roman Empire talking about, oh, we need to save our taxes to save the empire or we crumble, and all this stuff is brilliant.
Oh man, we have if you don't laugh, you'll go crazy.
Yeah.
Hold on, Nico. It's kind of like I told my wife Michelle. I said, Michelle, the thing that Trump was doing is not right. That's why I got Joe Biden out there, and he's doing a good job. Little Obama.
That's fantastic, man.
Yeah. All right, brother. God bless, my man. Take care of yourself.
God bless, mate.
And let me know when you have this thing posted. I'll share it with my audience as well.
Good one, man. See you around, right?
Take care, buddy. Cheers.
Cheers, bye. And thanks to everybody who's listened today on the show. And we'll see you again shortly on the Nikos Show. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to the Nikos Show. I trust you enjoyed its content and were transported on an adventure. If you are a world-class expert in your field or you know one, please get in touch. I'm also looking for long-term partners to sponsor the show. Please share with your friends if you like this episode, and please leave a rating and leave a review if you haven't done already. See you again soon. Nikos out. Bye-bye.